Hello world, it's Dave again, and I got a little moment or two when I mess around with this, like so. Probably should have done this beforehand. There we go. I got a video for you here to recommend a new author and a new book series that I'm halfway through. It's just two books, and then I believe a series of three follows it, but they're only semi-related to these first two. It's set in the same universe, but then beyond this story arc that I'm reading about right now, and it's fantastic. It's the Commonwealth saga. I don't know. And the first book is called Pandora's Star, and I love it. It's sci-fi, obviously. It's by one of my favorite authors, only based on one other book series that I've read of his, which is called the Night's Dawn trilogy. But it's absolutely amazing stuff. And so I got a whole bunch of reasons why I really I love this author. And the more I've read his stuff and the more I read other books, I realize why that's the case. So I'm a person who, and I'm sure there's tons of people like myself, when I read, I have to pay a lot of attention. And depending on the book that I read, I got to pay more or I got to pay less attention to the style in which the author has chosen to write, if I'm going to absorb into my head exactly what it is that they're trying to convey, the image that they're putting onto the page for me. Now, Peter F. Hamilton in this book, Pandora's Star, his greatest strength, I would say, and it was so funny because I had this idea in my head and then I quickly wikied, just what his career was. I was curious to see how many books he'd sold, which I couldn't find. But the first thing they said about his style is that it's in a clear, prosaic form, or clear. I'm gonna even screw up the video here to go and look for that exact description on Wiki, because I want to describe it myself as well. But I was just blown away at how clear they described it. Okay, he uses a clean, prosaic style, and this is bullseye, because I just finished reading a couple other books that I enjoyed, but when I say that I have to read slowly normally, that I couldn't believe how slow I was reading in these books. I just had to slow down to a degree that was, in my mind, kind of ridiculous. And then I started reading Peter F. Hamilton again because my buddy was telling me that I got to check this book out. It's amazing. And I immediately found that I may still be looking up words here and there, but the way in which he conveys the image on the page is just so that you can understand it. Whatever that style is, whatever that clean, prosaic style is, it can still have complexity without confusing you. I don't know if it's in the ordering of the words. It's just a feeling that I've got ever since I've started reading his books, and it's entirely true. So if you want to be able to just gorge on the page, if you want to be able to absorb the image easily, this is an author that conveys that, and it's at no loss of complexity. You will have, that's something else that he's known for, is that these are giant space operas with, he usually has at the beginning of his books a whole, call it cast sheet, of all the different characters, main characters, minor characters, ancillary characters, or whatever they're called. But it's a massive cast, and you never feel lost, and everyone feels as though they're incredibly well developed, that you do care about. So that's just to say something of his style, that he's going to give you this sweeping, unimaginable scope and scale, but at the same time, you're going to be able to pick it off the page as though you're reading Dr. Seuss, So that's a unique thing when you can enjoy that level of complexity, but it's communicated clearly. I would say another author who writes like this is C.S. Lewis. He pulls off the same thing. The other thing that I would recommend reading this book for is that when I read books, one of the reasons I read books, because there's millions, right? But one of the reasons I read books is because I love cool ideas. Now, it's one thing if you put a cool idea or a cool piece of technology into a book. You can just spit it out in a sentence. They have this kind of thing. But then how do you develop that idea? It's only as cool as your development is beyond that point that you mention it. Sometimes we can hint at things and that piques our interest, but then it's really what you do with it beyond that is kind of going to stand the test of time. And that's something that I found really, really intriguing. This book takes place in 2300, and the idea is that humans have been able to create wormholes as opposed to using ships to travel to different planets. They've got the technology to build wormholes. And when they connect to these other planets, they do like a reconnaissance mission on the planet to check the quality of the atmosphere and everything like that. And then they connect planets to the Commonwealth, as their whole civilization is known, through railroad tracks. That's the idea. And so you got these railroads that like go through a wormhole, and then you're on another planet. And what they have in terms of longevity for the society that exists at this time, and this is the idea I want to develop the most in terms of cool idea, although there are many in the book, but I don't want to ruin it or spoil any of the plot for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the plot just to pique your interest, I think better than reading the back of the book, but this is just for the ideas of it. Their idea of rejuvenation is that they have something that they've gotten to a point in technology where you just don't perpetually stay young, that you do age in this world, but they have a technology, it's just rejuvenation. And when you go to one of these clinics, they rejuve your body and they bring you back. They literally regress your body's age back to something like 18 or 19. And then they can genetically tailor your body to any sort of specifications that you might have. It kind of gets like he goes by a point in the book. It's crazy the amount of changes that you can literally change your sexuality in one of these things. So when you're doing pre-op, post-op, like you literally, it doesn't matter anymore. If you're like a woman in a man's body and a man in a woman's body, you can literally become that with this rejuve. And then you grow up again from that point. And so people will live lifetimes where they've gotten older, people generally reach about 60, 70 years old, and then they go in for rejuvenation. And then they go in for rejuve, they come out at that regressed age, and then they do have the mindset of somebody who's lived for that lifetime, but then they got all the hormones and everything of somebody who's at that age again, and so they're all sexually peaked when they come out, and they've got whole like places that you can go to because you're going to be so sexually promiscuous. And it's his discussion of, now he's got that cool idea out there in the book, but how does it impact the world? And he just discusses it on an incredible level. He doesn't have that as like a background fact. It affects every single facet of the way that these people live their lives in the book, and he does a great job of expanding it and making it really interesting. From one family that you meet where everybody's at different stages. There's like a young son who they refer to anybody who's not been rejuvenated once as first lifers. He's a first lifer. And he's married to, I think it's a second lifer, a woman who's like in her 160th year, something like that. And it's kind of strange. It's this cool play on society where we think of people in our own society doing something kind of ridiculous if they date two below their own age, if it's like 10 or 15 years. But that social faux pas is gone in this world. It's now that if you date somebody who's less than a century, and it's really frowned on for anybody who's made it past their first life to date somebody from their first life. So if you're less than 100, you're considered, just way too fickle and crazy. Oh, those 80-year-olds, they've barely lived. And so it's just a really fascinating idea. And there's this guy who has a family barbecue with everybody at different levels, some of them hundreds of years old, some of them closer to himself. And he just does an incredible job of discussing the dynamic of what it would be like if a family existed like this. And then, like I say, there's the social taboos of who it is that you're having a relationship with, both up and down, and all the different ways that it impacts the society. So I love that you take a cool idea in a book, but then you make it really impact the book, and you give it some feeling, and it's not just this cool idea that kind of like slips by and you may or may not have mentioned, but it doesn't really impact the flow of the book, where this feels like it impacts everything, that this is the kind of world that they live in. And it really makes you think. It really makes you think. So now that I've talked about kind of the author, his style, and a little bit about the way that I enjoy him developing ideas, I can explain a little bit of the plot to you, which is fascinating. It's really good. So what you've got is the story starting with this astronomer who notices, he's an astronomer, so he's been following the night sky, and he notices these two stars in the distance that when he's following them, he's doing some research, he notices that they blink out. And then kind of the cool science behind this, and for myself, I'm an art student, I'm afraid of numbers, but again, because of his clean style, I was able to get the idea that he was trying to convey. And that was that because these stars, then their position in the sky, and them blinking out when they do, it means that what you're actually seeing, given the way that light travels, is you're seeing something that has already occurred 1,000 years ago for the distance that these stars are away, for the distance that the light had to travel for the light to change in our perceptive field, that they have been blanked out. And so what he takes this to mean, the way in which they disappeared so quickly, is that it couldn't be any sort of, call it astronomic or astronomy anomaly, of something like a star exploding or something like that. They disappear too quickly, that it has to have been manufactured, this disappearance. And this occurred in our history on Earth when Rome was still in power. So it kind of freaks him out, because what civilization can make a whole planet disappear when we were at that stage in our existence? And these are called the Dyson pair. And so he obviously is curious and brings this up with the Commonwealth, and they have to think that this could be some sort of crazy society, and they start to speculate on what it is. And this begins the pioneering voyage. For the first time, it's at such a distance that they can't wormhole jump to it. They don't have that technology, so they have to build a ship. And so for the first time since humans have evolved to this point where they can spread across multiple stars in their galaxy, they're kind of becoming a seafaring people, or sorry, a spacefaring people again, where they want to find out what it is that blanked out this star. And so that's how the book kind of starts, is they find this star, it in fact disappears, they have no idea why, and they want to know why. And there's back and forth, some people are saying, maybe whatever did this to them did it for a reason, we should leave it alone. Whereas others are, with a more adventuresome spirit, want to know exactly what it is that caused this. And so they start to build the second chance, the ship, to go and find out what it is that blocked out the Dyson pair. And I haven't really given away anything. That's just kind of like to whet your appetite. That's just kind of where it goes. And it's amazing. I'm now about halfway through the second book, and I'll do like a cumulative review at the end, where I'll just put like spoiler alerts, and I just discuss the ideas and kind of plot things that I enjoyed so much. Where if people just want a general review, that's what this is. And I think the book's incredible. I think if you enjoy science fiction, that this is right up your alley. I mean, this author he's considered one of the best British authors that exists. So it's not easy to like him. Sorry, it's not hard to like him. And maybe he's just undiscovered for you, because that seems to be the way with authors. Every author I find to read, I'm like, apparently this guy's the biggest deal on the planet, and I've never heard of him. So I feel that'll probably be the case with a number of people who watch this and check out my recommendation on it. So it's Peter F. Hamilton's Pandora's Star, and the second book is called Judas Unchained, which is the one that I'm reading now. And they're tomish. they're pretty thick, but if you enjoy good character development, clearly stated ideas and themes, while still retaining complexity, then this is a fantastic, interesting, incredibly rewarding book that'll kind of get you speculating on your own existence as it is now. I think about how it seems so far-fetched, a lot of these ideas, but then again, a lot of them aren't to our own existence. We're reaching a sort of stage like this in our own technological evolution, and I think we could very likely see some of the crazy things that come out of this book, and also some of the social impacts that have already started to affect us. I can make that as a final tag, where everybody has in this their e-butler, it's called, which is basically something that you have wet wired into you, which allows you to access the internet, that is it's perpetually with you. When you think about it, that's pretty much what we have here. It's an e-butler. If you have any questions, you just ask it. You get it to do all sorts of things, organize travel trips for you, anything under the sun, and it's only gaining more and more complexity. So we kind of in a low-tech form have some of the ideas that they discuss in this. So that's the long and short of it. He's a fantastic author. It's a fantastic book, and I think I've done justice to trying to say why that is the case. So If you enjoy this video, please do like, subscribe, and share for any other book-loving nerds that you might know, like myself, because I'm going to make more. I'm reading all the time, and I'll try and do my best to release some more reviews as I go. That's about it. I'm going to put a song at the end of this one down in the description aside with my information. It's going to be the national I Should Live in Salt. I believe that's the name of it. Fantastic song, fantastic group. Just a little bonus for getting to the end of the 15 minutes if you got this far. The little Easter egg that lies within the last 30 seconds. All right, so like I like to say, until we meet again next time, world, ciao for now. Thanks for tripping with Dave. I hope the Fukushima reactor never ever explodes with the power of 14,000 nuclear bombs like I'm reading on the internet now. That'd be really bad for me. That's a darker tan than I want. All right, ciao for now.